Hi, everyone. My name is Mariam Safi, and I am the Vice Chair of AES Germany section. This is my pleasure to welcome you to the first research colloquium of AES Germany with the topic of artificial intelligence or AI in audio, and also its controversy and opportunities. This colloquium will be held in English. We will start an introduction to the topic by Joshua Rice, followed by the experts' remarks. And the talk will end with a Q&A session at the end, where your questions are very welcome on that. This event is organized by AES Germany. So thank you everyone for supporting us, especially to Banu Shahin, who is managing the technical side for our today's session right now. Ralph Kessler, who was the main organizer of the event and also is moderating the chat for today. Tobias Goldman, who was our technical writer and also supporting Banu today with the technical side. And I think you know him from the previous research colloquia anyway. And also Jonathan, who is the chair of the session. So thank you all. And on behalf of the team, I want to thank all of you for taking the time and join us on today's events. This is really, really great. And it's unbelievable how many guests we have today. If you want to have more information about this event or the upcoming research colloquia, you can have the QR codes here, or just go to the website aesgermany.org and check the different newsletters that we have for each region or the general one from the AES Germany. Before starting the session, we would like to thank one other person, and this is Rafael Casilla, who organized and well established the previous events during past 2 years under AES German section with Elena Shabalina, who is not today here, I guess, but she's going to join us on the next event. And Tobias, who is still strongly supporting us. So Rafael, would you say some words to our guests?
Thanks. So I'll just start by saying it was South German section that I was doing for the last 2 years, not Germany section. That's kind of what I see as the biggest thing to come out of my 2 years as chair of the South German section, that we put together some momentum so that we could create an all of Germany section and do stuff like what we've got today. So I'm very happy that you guys have put this all together. I'm looking forward very much to seeing the talk. It's a great topic. Interesting topic, controversial topic. I like those. Yeah. So yeah, that's all really what I wanted to say. Good luck with everything going forward. And I'm part of it, right? Because I'm leading the Karlsruhe group. Anyone who's from Karlsruhe or near Karlsruhe, let me know. And because we meet every quarter at a pub in Karlsruhe, and we could talk about audio. So look forward to seeing anyone in the area there at those meetings going forward. So
Thank you, Rafael.
That's all I have to say. Yeah, thanks. Good luck, Jack. Bye.
Thank you. That's great. And also thank you for being here today. We appreciate it a lot. And I think this is the time that I would like to invite Jonathan to introduce our speakers, because I already spoke enough. So Jonathan, would you take over, please?
Absolutely, a pleasure. Hi, everybody. It's great having so many people here, also some familiar names on the list. It's beautiful. I have the honor of introducing our panelists for today, and that is Josh Rice. He is a professor and entrepreneur in residence at Queen Mary University of London. He has published more than 200 scientific papers and is the author of Working with the Web Audio API and co-author of Intelligent Music Production and the textbook Audio Effects, Theory, Implementation, and Application. He is the current president of the Audio Engineering Society and co-founder of the highly successful spin-out company Lander, and recently formed the startups Tons and MSindo. His primary focus of research is on the use of state-of-the-art signal processing techniques for sound design and audio production, He maintains a popular blog, YouTube channel, and Twitter feed for scientific education and dissemination of research activities. Next, I would like to introduce Hannah Baumgartner. She financed her studies in hearing technology and audio as a freelance camera assistant and sound recordist and graduated in 2008. As a scientist, she worked at the Oldenburg Computer Science Institute office and since 2013 at the Fraunhofer IDMT in Oldenburg Hearing Research. She has been active in the Association of German Sound Engineers for many years and was also a board member there until June 2022. She was project leader for Fraunhofer IDMT in the 3-year-long Speech Intelligibility Transformation and Autocorrection project. Fritz Fey was born in 1950 and is the publisher and editor-in-chief of the German pro audio magazine Studio Magazin, which has been published monthly since, now get this, January 1978. Fritz Fey started as a recording and mixing engineer in 1974, specializing in mastering since 2005. He also worked as a consultant and designer in the field of studio acoustics since the mid-1980s. And lastly, I would like to introduce Alex Bankhammer. He is one of the founders of Sonible, an audio company based in Austria, best known for their AI-powered plugins. He studied audio engineering with a focus on digital signal processing and music information retrieval and has always been fascinated by the beauty of data that lies within music. After years of coding audio plugins, he is now responsible for product management, marketing, and business development at Sonible. For us to get a better understanding of the depths of the topic, Josh Rice will be giving us a bit of an introduction. When working in machine learning for audio, or even just being a member of the AES, it's hard not to know the name Josh Rice. So now it's my profound pleasure to ask him to kick off today's event with an overview.
Guten Tag and hello everyone, and thank you Jonathan, and thanks to all the hosts and everyone for organizing the meeting and for inviting me to come along. So I'll give a short presentation or short-ish presentation, but I can sort of summarize a bit of information right from the beginning. Yeah, so I can summarize a few things. Is AI here in audio? Yes, definitely. And is more and more coming, for sure. Will it affect the jobs of sound engineers? Absolutely. It may even replace some of those jobs, but it will certainly mean that people's jobs are changing and people will need to retrain. So I'm going to start by kind of setting the scene, giving a pitch as to why it's needed or what the problem was a few years ago. If one compares with video technology, the modern digital camera has autofocus, face, scene, image, motion detection, red eye removal, but recording devices have really none of this, and your standard digital audio recorder is deaf. It doesn't listen to the audio that's coming in, doesn't make intelligent decisions based on the audio streams. And in fact, it assumes that people expect it to be done. So if you look at some of the promotional material that audio recording devices have, took a few quotes here, and they will say things like they have a retry function to help fix mistakes, or it can record anywhere. Whereas no camera today will promote itself by saying you can take photos both inside and outside with this camera. So it all boils down to the fact that there generally is not an autofocus for audio. Now, I've been saying this for a few years, and it has changed quite a bit recently. There's more and more intelligent technology, but it still lags behind. The audio world assumes that with audio devices, a lot of manual interaction is required if someone wants good audio quality. So what we've been looking at is a field called intelligent music production. So the challenge here is to create intelligent systems that will do something like the production that a sound engineer would do. And there are three general applications of this. One is as an assistive tool for the sound engineer, so automating the repetitive tasks, the technical but not really advanced aspects of production, or as a black box system for a musician so that they can practice, perform without the need for a sound engineer while doing that practice session or performance. And potentially as embedded systems for the consumer. So while listening to content, while playing a game, anything like that, in the background, the music and other audio content is always being mixed and mastered automatically for an enhanced listening experience. So I'll show a video now, and this is of one of our early attempts at an automatic mixing system. What will be shown on the interface is just for visualization purposes of showing what the system is doing. But when you run it, no interface is necessary. It's essentially just turning things on and optionally turning them off. And it should sound really bad in the beginning because the audio is coming in with a lot of clipping, a lot of distortion. All the levels are off, nothing has been panned, and step by step, we will simply turn on automatic mixing tools. Okay, so how does this work? Well, I mentioned that this is a fairly old system here. It was developed close to 10 years ago. So there's no neural network, no deep learning going on. In fact, it's not even machine learning as people often know it, with large amounts of training data. Instead, what has happened is we've embedded best practices, rules of sound engineering. So for instance, we know that there's an attempt to make sure that all sources are heard, none of the sources too loud or too quiet. We know we try to spatialize the sources to use the panning space fairly maximally, while at the same time not hard panning any of the sources, and also low frequency sources are more likely to be positioned towards the center, higher frequency sources positioned a bit wider. So we have a large set of rules like that. We analyze each of the sources, their frequency content, their dynamics, and based on the interaction between these sources, we apply the rules of mixing. So, unfortunately, those controls keep appearing even when I don't want them to. But this brings up lots of questions. Here we have an automatic mixing system. What is it supposed to do? And what is the role of artificial intelligence in music production in general? Is it just to assist? To help, to guide, to provide more metrics, to make the job easier? Or is it to automate tasks, to completely replace the need for a sound engineer to do something or to do something else? Or taken to the extreme, is it to annihilate? If we don't need a sound engineer to do this task or that task, do we need a sound engineer at all? Will it take away people's jobs? And I guess that is the main controversy in AI in audio. So this is a big question. And one of the first things that people discuss, or that is one of the main arguments here, that people say, well, AI will not solve things, is because mixing and music production is a very creative task. And I don't know, apologies, I don't know what's going on with the
It's okay, just keep going.
Yeah. As you can probably see, I've been hiding them and they just pop up again. So sound engineering is a very creative task. And can we get computers to do that creativity? Do we want computers to replace that creativity? As soon as rules are established, people try to break those rules. But this is not necessarily that much of an issue. And I'm going to quote the graffiti artist Banksy here, who said, all artists are willing to suffer for their work, but why are so few prepared to learn to draw? And what he's getting at is that in order to be creative, not always, but very often, one needs to know the rules first. One needs to know the technical aspects so that one can convey what they want to convey, and then they can choose to break those rules, and they can choose to experiment. But some knowledge of the technical aspects is necessary. And I think the AI systems will, for at least the short term, tend to focus on the technical aspects, but they're not replacing the creative aspects. And even if we do come up with AI systems that can do creativity, then there will be demand for a new type of creativity, for something that operates differently. And we've seen this sort of thing time and time again throughout the history of sound engineering and music production. So the original form of dynamic range compression, it was for many different things, but one of the reasons why it evolved was to essentially automate the task of writing the faders. So early recording devices could only properly transmit signals of a certain level. Too quiet, it wouldn't be heard at all, buried beneath the noise, and wouldn't be recorded onto a device. Too loud, and it would get clipped and distorted. So someone was constantly adjusting the volume levels to keep it fairly constant throughout. And dynamic range compressors were just to automate tasks like that. Now, with side chaining and pumping and things like that, they're used very creatively in electronic dance music and in other forms. And we see that all the time. As soon as an automation technology comes along in this field, people decide to use it creatively. And this harks back to the early days of the Industrial Revolution. Late 1700s, there was a movement, the Luddite movement. Essentially, it was textile workers who were finding their jobs were being replaced due to machinery, so cotton mills and things like that. But one important thing to note about the Luddites is they were smashing the machinery of the Industrial Revolution, but they weren't against the Industrial Revolution, not generally. Their issue was that they weren't being trained and employed using the new technology that was emerging. They were quite happy to work in the cotton mills. Very few people today would be, but they wanted to be trained with that new technology. And that's one of the main ways that AI influences jobs in the field, is that people constantly need retraining with the new emerging technologies. So I mentioned that many aspects of music production are quite technical, and there's certain things here that an intelligent system can actually do better than a human. So one example is dealing with comb filtering, and that's when a signal is recorded by, say, two different devices, or you have a signal summed with a processed version of that signal in the production chain. And so there's a little bit of a delay, either between the two devices or between the original signal and the affected signal. And when they get summed together, that delay can cause destructive interference, which dulls the sound. So I'm going to play an audio example here where we turn on and off an automatic system for delay correction and comb filtering prevention. And it also deals with polarity issues. So one of the channels has been inverted. And here, the system can realign the signals within one sample, whereas ordinarily a sound engineer, when trying to do this, would get things close enough that it just sounds good, but not sample accurate. Now, when the researcher working with me first showed me this demonstration of the technology, I thought he might have actually cheated, that he just boosted the volume or something like that. But no, the effect can be quite dramatic, the prevention of comb filtering. So it is possible for the AI systems not just to do what a sound engineer does, but in certain specific cases like this, actually do it better. And if someone's goal is high fidelity, high quality production, the combination of creative and technical skills from the sound engineer in conjunction with the use of intelligent technologies can actually make better sounding content, not just more produced content. The whole field, though, is very controversial. So early on, we entered an automatically mixed recording into the AES student recording competition. So we actually cheated because the competition requires that all submitted recordings needed to have been produced by a student. And in this case, it was produced by an AI system created by a student. So anyway, it didn't win. We didn't expect it to win, but the comments from the judges were really interesting. After the competition, I went up to each of the judges and I asked them what did they think of the technology, and then I told them that it was the mix had been produced by an AI system. And the first judge, when I told him, said, "Oh, that's really interesting. I wouldn't have guessed. Wonder how you did that." The second judge was blown away. "Wow, that's amazing. I got to tell lots of other people." And the third judge, I first asked him, "What did you think of the mix?" And he mentioned some good things, some bad things, some areas for improvement. And then when I told him that it wasn't a student, it was actually an AI system, he said, "Oh, I knew it all along. It was rubbish. You could obviously tell it wasn't a human." And I think people do feel threatened by AI systems, and they're not comfortable with the idea, quite rightly, of them being able to do what we can do. But it is important to note that sound engineering has very technical aspects. So here's another example. We have ratings of the quality of different automatic mixing systems. Each one of them is trying to look at a different aspects of mixing, where a machine learning system tried to automate that. So one is level balancing. The next one was, I think it's a bit hidden here, but yeah, stereo panning. And the third one was compression. So what I want to bring your attention to is with the faders here, what happened with the auto mix. Here we had, I think, 10 songs, and we asked people to rate all the mixes in terms of their overall quality. The unmixed version generally did quite poorly. The manual mix, so this was a human sound engineer, overall did quite well, and in fact, on average, might have performed very close to the automatic mix. EPG was a very early attempt at an automatic mix. But the most amazing thing here is that the automatic mix performed consistently on every song. It's sort of like sometimes the sound engineer would take a creative decision that a few people might like a lot, but on average, was not popular with everyone. And sometimes they would take a creative decision that would outperform this AI system. But the AI system, it didn't matter which song you gave it, it produced a pretty good mix, a decent mix. Now, this wasn't the case with all of the technologies, but this was the sort of behavior that we saw a few times. It wouldn't necessarily do the best, but it would consistently do something that a lot of people liked. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to go over all of the results here, but I do want to note that AI in audio is disruptive. And it fits kind of the expectation for disruptive technologies, that in the beginning, when they are first introduced, they don't perform as well as the existing ways of doing things, the manual ways of doing things. It takes time and effort for a disruptive technology to break into an entrenched market where people have perfected and honed the previous way of doing things over decades. But it has the potential to outperform other techniques over time. And AI is like that. It may not replace creative audio production, but it will disrupt the marketplace in highly unpredictable and pretty amazing ways. So what is this AI doing? Well, it forms the background of a company, Lander, that provides an automatic mastering service, which is based on technology that came from researchers working with me. Interestingly, we planned it as an automatic mixing system, but Lander commercialized the mastering first and stuck with that. And it really has grown a lot. I'm sure most of the audience are familiar with plugins from lots of different companies, Isotope, for instance, who have some AI systems, even if under the hood, even if it's a small component of what it does, AI is entering audio production all over the place. Waveshaper is another spin-out company from my group, and this one does deep learning, so neural network modeling of audio effects. The idea being someone has a complicated bit of kit or an audio effect chain. They love how it sounds. Given before and after examples, Waveshaper can build neural networks that do exactly the same thing, or very close to the same thing, as that black box audio effect chain does. And we've recently co-founded another company called ROEX, and it's based on research by Dave Ronan, who worked with me, who developed an automatic mixing system. So not like the ones that were shown, but essentially focused on the idea that a big part of mixing is addressing masking in the mix. And so what's the best processing analysis method to determine how much masking is in a mix, measure it, and apply new effects on all of the tracks to minimize that masking while producing a great mix. So I'll play an example because this gives you a quick idea of the state of the art here, and then I'll conclude.
Everybody keeps telling me I should get a lip on.
So yes, it sounds louder with the automatic tools there, but it's not a simple volume change. It's looking at the interaction between the tracks, trying to carve out bits of the spectrum, trying to minimize the masking between the tracks by applying dynamic range compression and equalization and panning. And that naturally makes things sound louder in addition to just raising the volume. So that's kind of where things are going. One more point, or points to quickly mention. Most of the technology that's shown, with the exception of WaveShaper, is not neural network based. And that's because we don't have the access to the huge amount of rich data required to really build a successful deep learning neural network system for automatic mixing. And there may be other reasons, but that's already a problem. So at this point, I'd like to thank all of the main researchers who've worked with me in this field, and I will pass it back to others for the panel discussion and more. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Josh, for this really insightful introduction. I would like to ask the other panelists, Fritz, Alex, and Hannah, to join us now. And first, I would like to get just a quick idea of what's your background, how do you see the topic in your fields, and maybe take a few elements that you found especially interesting. For me, it was two big overarching topics that I think are really interesting to talk about in this context, which would be, can AI reproduce creative decisions? And the other one would be the trade-off between assist versus replace. I think both of those are really interesting on a research side and also for a practical endangering your livelihood type of a perspective. So let's open up the field from now on.
Yeah, I'm Alex. I'm one of the co-founders of Sonible, and we are focusing on kind of the concept of assisted mixing for quite a while now. And we are trying to do that in terms of audio plugins with all the nice problems you have if you're doing things in the DAW, but we're trying it anyway. And I think the idea of what we're doing is very, very similar to the things that Josh presented. So our concept was always the idea of assisted mixing, so not to replace anything. And that's why we, all our tools provide full control for the user, but it's kind of, the system gives you a starting point that allow you to start quicker or have a second opinion, or however you want to call it. And how did we get into that is we all have a background in, like all the founders had a background in engineering and in audio production. And what we found awkward is how much things were possible technology-wise even 10 years ago, and how little of that was available to the users or like to the producers in the studio. And what we wanted to do, we wanted to do our own stuff, and we didn't want to reproduce like another analog gear in digital ways. Like this is nice for different applications, but we wanted to kind of rethink how would, for example, an EQ or compressor, whatever, look like, or how could you interact with it if you would invent it now and not 20 years ago or longer, when analog signal processing was like put a lot of restrictions onto what you're doing. And that's how we came into first kind of model-based stuff that we did to simulate things similar to the first system that Josh showed. And then we moved on with our Smart EQ3, for example, really to use deep learning and neural networks to make the decisions of how to optimize stuff. And I think it's an extremely exciting topic. Also the question of where does kind of fixing, for example, a recording end and becoming creative in changing the sound of the recording begin. So this is always a trade-off, and this is something we are not sure where to, like, yeah, it's an open question for us. Like how far should we go into the creative fields? Up to now, we didn't go too far into that, but probably in the future. Yeah, and it's great to see different, like 2 or 3 years ago, it was much more difficult to talk to people about AI because the acceptance was much lower than it is right now. And it's great to see that people are starting to see the opportunities that the tools offer, and not only the fear that they could probably take away their jobs at some point. So, yeah.
So
that's.
If I could comment on a couple of things you mentioned there that were really interesting. People do, when first exposed to the idea, they think of the sound engineer at the back of a gig operating the mixing console out of a job. And that is a possible thing, and it's important to discuss that and to raise the concerns and think about it. But that is only one aspect. The assistive mixing is definitely another one. Then you have those situations where performers were practicing in the garage or just any practice session. They would not have a sound engineer on site creating a good mix of every practice session. Someone playing a game where there could be dozens of sound assets being rendered at any time. There isn't some miniature sound engineer within the game operating the console. And there's situations where the sounds in a teleconference situation like this, everyone's mic gets muted when one person's speaking, but wouldn't it be great if multiple people could speak at the same time and you're still able to hear all of them? So there's many applications, including the assistive mixing that you mentioned, that are not threatening, but would benefit by AI mixing systems.
Totally agree. So I think this is one of the core messages that we try to convey or tried to convey over the last couple of years. And I have to add one field we didn't look into too much, but which is also really interesting, is the whole AI, like generative AI part, like be it effects or be it really like a suggestion of melodies and so on. The interesting thing is, while I'm totally fine with all the assisted mixing because that's what we're doing, I'm still a bit skeptical about the other things. So it's not that I say, AI is always the right solution, but I also think it's a sensible topic and we have to approach it with kind of a good feeling for it's a new technology and we should not just throw it onto everything that's out there. So I hand on to Hannah. Probably you're unmuted now.
Yes. Yes, I think one important question is also why and how do I use AI tools? And as assistive technologies, I see that very pragmatically, that's good. But when AI tools make decisions, there's you enter an area where it's the future is coming, and I think we and the humanity or all humans need therefore a lot of knowledge and perhaps also philosophical debates. You know what I mean? Because it's more than we can verstehen im Moment. We cannot not really check that whole complete capital of new technology, and the techs are growing, and they are much faster than our brains, the human brains. They are behind, I think.
But I think it's also something that we could or probably have to accept, that at some point the potential of technology will just, like, a computer is just better in doing certain things, and other things human beings are better. And I think the interesting aspect is really like the interconnection of giving the human being more abilities by kind of offering tools or interfaces or information that were not there before.
I'd like to ask a question right there. I once heard that our creative output is shaped by the tools we use. So for instance, architects can tell which software was used for the design of specific buildings or pieces of furniture and things like that. So when using these AI methods, even generatively, are we expanding our toolkit or are we reducing our toolkit? Do we put too much trust in this, or do we actually give ourselves more possibilities to create sounds that we've never even imagined?
What's interesting, looking at the history of audio engineering, it's been revolution after revolution of automation. And I mentioned the compression example, but there's many, many more. And yet it's actually become more and more creative. So the music producer used to just be a recording engineer because all they did was figure out how to record something. Now they can be as creative as the musicians themselves and influence the composition and shape a recording in many different ways. So they aren't necessarily in conflict. And the more you're able to automate, the more you find ways to be creative beyond those parts that are automated.
Fritz, thank you so much for joining at this point. Maybe you can speak from your experiences, of decades of mixing and mastering. I'm sure you've had tedious tasks that you wished somebody else to do, from cutting tape to moving faders. Where do you see the trade-off between automation and creativity?
Well, it is a fact that human beings make mistakes, and I have the feeling that we're now in a phase where they all should be corrected. So we have a lot of plugins, and we have a lot of functionality that is repairing bad recordings, that is repairing bad mixes, that is repairing a sound or whatever. And my point is that a good recording engineer makes mistakes, of course, but he will always deliver good work. And for me, it is when I go back to the 70s, when I started being an assistant engineer in a small studio that had 8 tracks on 1-inch tape, we were all involved in a mixing process. So we had a lot of assistance by just other people that did certain jobs. That one was turning a pan pot at a specific time, and the other was pushing up faders or switching off channels, whatever. And that was sort of an automation that we had. And it was, of course, a very good move to see that there was an automation system. The first was, I guess, Memory's Little Helper. And so we could, let's say, concentrate on what we're doing. And we could do certain tasks in serial and put that all together to an automation process. And that was fine, but it was the time when it started to be getting more perfect and more perfect. And I'm not quite sure whether this perfection is a good thing for creativity.
This having to be more perfect and perfect, I think there's an ongoing, growing technical correctness level, and which has suppressed human free thinking, perhaps, and individual non-conformity. Yeah, not just since yesterday. It makes us a little bit machine conform, I think. So, and this is a very extremely powerful force that is stressing human beings, I think. The technical correctness, it's like you have to be more and more perfect, but that's not really the human aspect, because humans make mistakes.
Like rejecting a song because the intonation of the lead singer is off by a smidge, but the performance was actually amazing. So something like that.
Yeah, when you think about Melodyne or Auto-Tune, musicians get lazy because they know bad vocals can be corrected. And everybody who is working in the pop business is sending their tracks to a Melodyne expert. Even if the singing was okay, there's still some polishing that will be done with very good produced music. So it is this perfection that makes me a little bit nervous, because
so it's an interesting one, Fritz, because there's 2 examples of creativity there with Auto-Tune. First, Auto-Tune was never intended to go beyond minor corrections in vocals, but whereas compressors have attack and release times to smooth things out, the designer of the original Auto-Tune allowed the timing, the ballistics, to go to the extremes. He didn't think anyone would do that. He just hadn't bothered setting the parameters so that it couldn't do that. And so early recordings, of course, people experimented, found some strange but amusing distortions when you auto-tune to the extreme. So a whole field of music that generally people dislike or accept came from the fact that it was unplanned in the design. And I don't think anyone expected something like auto-tune the news, which is the extreme creative use of over auto-tuned content, not for what most people would consider good musical use, but certainly playful and creative means. So there you have an example of something that, if you look at it one way, is an issue with music production, but you also find people have used that automation highly creatively.
I'd like to interject one last question there in the creativity, because, well, coming from audio going into AI, I had a lot of colleagues asking me, it's like, oh, am I doomed as a mastering engineer? Is this something that will kill my job? And I always said, well, an AI system will only be able to replicate something that a mastering engineer has already done in the past. So the lack of actual innovation. But now with modern methods coming out, especially like in the vision areas, if you look at models like DALL-E 2 that can produce completely novel outputs, or in NLP, in text creation, these systems are producing outputs that no human has ever created even remotely. And so obviously it's only a matter of time for this to find its way into audio as well. And so then the question is, how can we use creativity in a creative way that still will keep this human touch and this level of appeal to other human beings?
Well, I have been thinking about this for quite a long time, and I have been reviewing most of the stuff that Alex's company is producing. And we have been talking on the phone and on the trade shows about what is a good assistant in the studio. And that, I think, is his approach to develop a tool that is an assistant for the engineer that's doing the job. And that's my point of view, because I do this job because I love this. And I don't want to be a passenger in an automated system that produces music for me. And I'm just watching how the computer is producing the music. And I would say, then let's find a computer or algorithm that is listening to the music that is produced by computer. Then we're out, and we maybe have time to do something different. But it's the passion and that I mostly find the reason for being motivated, working in this job, even though I'm over 70 now. And I hope I can do this for a lot of more years. And of course, I'm curious to see what technology can do. And I like certain plugins that do things that couldn't be done with analog technology. So for me, it is always a matter of taste. Will I use an analog device, or will I use a tricky digital device to repair something or make something possible that wouldn't be possible with the regular stuff that I normally used as a recording or mastering engineer? And I think for people who can't mix, they will maybe in the future have the choice to decide whether they want an algorithm to mix their music, or they want a real guy to mix their music. But I don't want to be exchanged by a machine, actually. Well, I can't fly, so I'm using a plane, of course, but that's not what I meant.
But I'm not sure if you can decide if you want the guy or the artificial intelligence, because there are some financial conditions and there are production conditions. And so what I observe is that if we watch or listen programs, most programs follow a relative simple scheme F. So, and I think this scheme F, and this is the door for this AI technologies and neural networks, because these are the rules and the simple facts or the simple how to do, but it's not the innovation or the
I think I fully understand what you mean, and as I said, I'm also like a bit not skeptical, but I'm also interested. Like, I'm not sure about the, for example, automatic composition part of AI, the whole generative part. Even though there are a lot of like, if I talk to people who are more involved into that, they say why they're doing is it's kind of to generate inspiration that allows people to get a couple of ideas and then fine tune and work with these new ideas. So it's again a bit like, the thing is, why is it so, would it be so bad to interact, for example, with a system that suggests some melodies compared to talking to a friend who suggests some melodies, if in the end it's your feeling that's deciding, okay, what path to choose. So and then up to a certain extent, if you will look at AI and we say, okay, for example, a lot of systems are trained on a lot of data, and all this data currently that we are using is generated by humans. So somehow it's even an interface between human beings. You know, it makes a lot of information and things accessible by putting it all into one system. So it's a very interesting space that's opening up, and that can be browsed rather easily compared to just talking to 2 or 3 people who have again been influenced by other people. And also, if we talk about, for example, I don't know, scheme F things, like how to do stuff. So many producers, for example, who are not that experienced, they go on YouTube and then they listen to 5 people and they tell them exactly, set the deck like this on a compressor and the EQ like this and like this. And this is really bad, because then they do it without even looking at the audio. The AI at least analyzes the audio and does it in a sensible way. So even if we think we have a free will and they're doing everything in a creative way, so often we are primed by same stuff that also primed the AI to do stuff. So I think at the end, sometimes the decisions we make are not that different to the AI. But going back to the initial question is like, how does the connection, like the human emotional interconnection, remain in the music if the AI is doing everything? And I think it's true, if the AI would be doing everything, then we lose this. But if the AI is just one building block that's inspiring you to do other stuff and so on, it is really just kind of a inspiration, a tool that helps you to accomplish certain stuff. In the end, it's just one part of the tool chain. It doesn't take away the human aspect of it, at least, yeah, as long as you don't take fully integrated systems. And the only part where I think these human aspects and creativity will probably really fade away is if you're looking at systems that are automatically generating music for TikTok videos. Yes, in this case, there is no more creativity in the music, but it's the whole creation. It's the strange TikTok video thing, which is again a creative piece of art that wouldn't have been possible a couple of years ago. So it's something new emerging, and it's different, but I think it's also fine. You know, it's just a totally different ambition if you're doing something like that. So yeah.
So I spent probably too much time on social media looking at what people have said about this sort of thing, and about the research that people working with me have done. And there was one great comment I liked from someone who said, you know, as a sound engineer, I hate this. I hate the idea of automatic music production. But as a musician, I welcome it, because I've had too many shows that were ruined by the sound engineer. And it's true for, you know, an amateur musician playing gigs at bars and pubs and things like that. The sound engineer is often as drunk as everyone else in the audience, or is brand new to it, or the owner of the venue says, sound engineer? What sound engineer? I didn't know you needed anything like that. So there are so many cases where assistive or even fully automated systems will be beneficial there. And we tend to concentrate on the robot versus Fritz, versus the professional. And that's not, maybe one day that might be an issue, but that really is not the main use case today.
All right, I'd like to take the first question from the chat. There's been some discussion here as well already by Christian and myself. Do you have examples of some results, effects, or new sounds that AI can add today to our listening experience that are not possible to obtain without it, which can go beyond, in the sense of an addition, the work of a sound engineer?
Christian Steinmetz just put an answer to that in chat. He's been working on that amongst other things, and he provided some links to things in archive where I think he had some sound examples to go along with papers or draft papers there. So yeah, there are some examples.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Let's see here. Yes, so we have one aimed at, I think, Fritz, which is an automated personalized mix according to my taste on the fly an option for the future?
Well, as I said already, I have nothing against the system. So I would always be open to a machine that does help my decisions or makes my decisions easier. So that is sort of what might be in the question, that I don't say that I hate automates or automated technology, but it's, for me, it's all a matter of how far I want to go. And because I love what I do, I would of course be the creative element in this process, but I like assistants that help me along. And that's what I normally write when I write reviews on Alex plugins, because that's exactly what he is offering to the people, that you are assisted in making decisions and you are assisted in being faster whenever that's whenever that's appropriate.
Okay, there's another one. We've been, I mean, the topic is AI and audio in a very broad sense, but we've pretty much focused on signal processing and signal generation. So, I mean, there's other areas where this could take effect, for instance, maybe like music understanding or suggestion algorithms like we see in Netflix or something like that. Where do you see, is that less risky, more risky? Does that have other opportunities for us right there?
So I think where we probably seen the most, I'll say machine learning, is in music information retrieval, music informatics. Not just understanding, but find me a song like this, find me a song that matches my mood for today, or Siri, play me something interesting, those sorts of things. And it has become more and more intelligent. The early systems were just, can we find the song that you are humming? Or if you stick your phone up to the speaker, can it tell you what song is playing? Now it's trying to match your taste. So is that controversial? Mostly it's not, because it's answering a clear request. But where it's problematic is if it's always recommending music in a certain way, then new music will never be discovered. For instance, if a system is based on mining social media for when someone has said, oh, if you like U2, you'll probably like Coldplay, or that sort of thing, it will never find a new artist who has not yet been discovered on social media. So these things, they do affect the marketplace, and they affect the consumption of music and potentially the listening experience as well.
All right, thank you. So I'd like to take the top voted question from Menti next, which is the controversy of AI in audio primarily related to music production? What about more speech-related productions, such as radio drama or podcasts? Adding to that, maybe things that have a higher volume, a higher throughput than perhaps single productions.
I think the controversy occurs everywhere, but Speech is well known and in some ways more serious because you can have fake speech by politicians. You can have things where people intentionally try to trick someone into believing something had been said when it hasn't. So the potential misuse probably has more serious consequences, although similar things can happen with music as well.
Yeah,
That's a very good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, back in the days when I talked to the guys from TC Electronic, they had a vocal processor that was able to, to change the voice of a singer to a certain style, just like sing like Elvis or sing like Don Henley or whatever. Of course, you wouldn't believe that this is Elvis now, but it was sort of the character of the voice was just copied and in a way emulated. And I guess this will be some of the next steps to make singers not only sing in tune, but also sing like somebody else. And still, it is nice to know that this will be working, but well, we do all this because we can or because it makes us happy?
Good question on style transfer there. Absolutely.
So yes, it was it. I hope we had the chance to answer at least most of the questions. If not, feel free to write us emails to reach us on the social media, on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, everywhere. And yes, again, thank you for your attention. And also thanks to the Research Colloquium team for making it happen for today's session. We are looking forward to seeing you guys for the next session, which is not clear when it will be, but we will send you the invitation. So thanks again.